And during my time there, I had a complete understanding of the divine order of the universe, how it could possibly be true that there is a God that is real and present today, knows each and every one of the billions of us on this planet individually, loves each and every one of us as though we're the only ones, and has a plan for each and every one of us and for the world that's one of hope.
It was like I had access to everything. And what struck me so strongly in my experience was being able to not just see that there was math and science in everything. It wasn't like, if a teacher gets up at the front and says, let me show you this math, or, let me teach you this. I was all of it. And I knew that while I was these things, this math and this science and this order that was in the universe, I knew that there was nowhere that it wasn't. And even if there's a tiny bug going across the room, I knew that that was within this math and science too, in this beautiful order. And so for me, it was beyond just beautiful, because my life before the experience, I struggled with looking out in the world and feeling like this really looks chaotic. I get that God's in charge and he gets to have the remote control to our lives and, pick what he wants. And then in the end, he'll explain why he did it. But it just seems so chaotic, and it doesn't seem like sensible enough that any being should be able to do it this way. And it frightened me, and it wasn't enough for me. It didn't appease me to see things this way. And so in my experience, to be within this order and see it, there was so much order, it was beyond anything I could imagine or ever put word to. It was incredibly beautiful and peaceful. And it's funny because also before my experience, I couldn't stand math and science, and it was like this huge mental block for me. I couldn't even get to like third grade math without just plugging my ears. Like, there's no way. It used to frustrate my dad because he tried to help, and it wasn't going to happen for me. I've always struggled with spatial things, time and space and numbers and things like that, because I was someone who had to feel everything inside of me. So to be having teachers in school trying to teach me something that I couldn't step inside of and feel or taste just didn't work for me. And then being in this experience where I could feel it all, it was really, really cool.
And he has beautiful ornamentation around him and on him. And as beautiful as he is, I can tell he's incredibly powerful. And I'm a little scared, because it feels like if he moved this hand, he could create a mountain. If he moved this hand, he would destroy the mountain. And I couldn't believe I was getting to be in front of such a big, powerful being, and that his focus and attention was on me. And he began to show me images. And he was showing me a flat plain. And the plain started to come together, and it was this kind of violent coming up of a mountain. And it was such a big event, and I was kind of scared and stepping back. And then the mountain started to erode. And the sand was coming down, and pieces were coming down, and then hillsides were coming down. And he was showing me it was making a beach. And he said to me, "Shall we bring down the mountain so you can have the beach?" And I said, "No, I like the mountain and the beach. I love when my feet walk in the warm sand on the beach. That feels so good." And he said, "Destruction makes available the ingredients for creation. Bringing down the mountain is part of making the beach. What looks like total destruction now is making available the ingredients for creation."
God, face to face. God didn't have a face, by the way. Remember, there's no stuff there. But he wasn't the guy with the big white beard and the lightning bolts, let me put it that way. And I'll tell you what God looked like, kind of. I've never been able to paint this. I've been trying and I just can't get it. Yet, not yet anyway. So pretend you are the Hubble Space Telescope. And so this is surrounding you on all levels. okay? Everywhere. And you know, when you look at a photograph of a galaxy is made up of little points of light, stars, right? Little points of light, jillions of them, right? And in this case, it was infinite. It went on forever. Little points of light. And I was one of those points of light. And we were all connected. And each one of those points of light was every tsetse fly, every snail, every human being, every rock who had ever lived. And that's right, rocks are alive. I can't explain that, but rocks are also made out of love. Everything is made out of love. So it was like every being who had ever lived was there, and we were all connected. We were all one thing. Now, we were separate. I was still Raymond, me, but I was also we collectively together were God. And I had this feeling of, I have all the potential and power of God. I wasn't God, but somehow through the connection with all the other points of light, I was God. So I wasn't God, but I was God. And it was like this one big thought, one big floating sphere of awareness. And we were singing, and I'll never forget this. This was so beautiful. It was worship. That's the best word I can describe it. And it was about love. And it makes music as we understand it, it seemed like a cheap imitation. I could taste it and touch it and swallow it and digest it. And it took on whole other dimensions. And we were singing, I love you. We love you. It was all, we were worshiping one another with pure, infinite love. And it was the most beautiful thing. And you know, I know a lot of people have a fear of death. I have zero fear of death. Matter of fact, I want to go back. I can't wait. I'm in no hurry. You know, I'm here to dance. I'm here to play this out as long as I can.
But I started thinking differently after that. So I seen them as animals, as their own person, like they're their own spirit too. And every plant that I see, I'm like, okay, plants are spirits too. Like I started seeing everything, the sky and the trees. I started appreciating all like nature, and I didn't before. I started understanding people more instead of, let's say if someone gets me mad really easy, after my experience, I more just understand them more. I try to think about what they're going through in life. Maybe something bad that they're going through, just like I was.
I was connected to Source as well, and it all came together in my life review. And I could feel everyone, and I could feel myself, and I had compassion on myself and other people. The way as parents, when we have a toddler or two toddlers, say they're playing, and you know, one gets mad and pulls the block from the other, and we're not thinking of that toddler, you're evil or you're bad, or now you're not gonna make it to heaven, you know, or if your toddler runs down the hallway and trips and falls, it's not, you know, I'm gonna write that one down. It was like everything was it. I just understood everyone like children, and I wanted for everyone, including myself. And in that life review, I was able to feel for myself the way we would feel for our own children. And I had this compassion for myself, where I wanted for myself to be happier and to do, you know, to do better, not as in, you know, get the higher grade, but just to be happier, that kind of better. like, have fun, lighten up, it's okay, you know, and things like that.
Okay, if God is a good, loving God, then how is it possible that he could allow the evil and the horror that obviously exists? How is that possible if he really does, if God is pure love? And so I think that religions had to invent an anti-God to explain that. Oh, that's not God, that's the devil doing that stuff, right? Well, that means God made the devil too. You know, so, I mean, it doesn't add up. But I can tell you one thing for sure. There was no judgment. There was no atonement. There was nothing that I had ever done that was completely forgiven. And forgiven in that context meant it was gone. It did not exist. You know, the stupid little boneheaded things I've done in my life that have been, you know, well, let's just say less than wonderful. I didn't have to atone for that. God wasn't holding me accountable for that. God was loving me right through it, and it was total and complete forgiveness.
I start watching kind of in 360 Technicolor in the atmosphere around me, all of the events of my life unfold, and it was incredible. The great decisions that I had made, the contributions that I had made, the little small things that I'd done to make somebody's day, and then there were the things where I hadn't used great judgment. And the one thing that really sticks out that just tickles me and shows me that the universe has this incredible sense of humor is there were these cringeworthy moments, absolutely, where you knew what was coming. And if I have to tell you that there was any kind of experience or any kind of negative aspect of the experience, that was it, and it's not even negative. It's that kind of, ooh, I see what's coming up, and I know what I did there. And you're looking around, well, who's judging this? That, you know, I was taught my whole life that somebody was going to be judging. So, you know, and I'm looking, and it's still just me and my cheerleaders, my guardians. And I'm like, wait a minute, this isn't how I was taught this works.
And we laughed and we played. And by the way, the light has a fantastic sense of humor. We would view some of the really silly things that I did in my lifetime, and we'd be laughing at how serious I took them. Because life down here is an illusion. It's a game. Don't take it so serious. The life has a wonderful sense of humor. And we're laughing and we're talking and we're just having a great time.
And I also discovered that God has a sense of humor because we chuckled at some of the events that we looked at. And that was very relieving to me. God is not or in my experience of all this, not judgmental in any way at all.
So I'm looking, there's no judge, and I'm realizing, oh, wait a minute, I'm judging this. Oh, well, I'm going to be really kind to myself here. And I'm seeing these experiences take place, and the feeling that I'm having is one of empathy for me in the decisions that I made with the tools that I had at the time, and for the other person who's experiencing my lack of judgment at the time, or what we might consider hurtful behaviors. And I'm watching, and I'm kind of very detached, and I'm going, okay, well, if I were doing that again, I might do it this way. And I'm thinking, and I'm integrating those thoughts. And that was it. There was no wrath. There was no judgment, just this peaceful, loving space of everything's okay.
We don't have to prove ourselves to be loved by God. That came with our creation. You don't have to be anything but what you are. Because what I learned on the other side is there is no judgment on us. None. Zip. Nada. We have to stop judging ourselves, because if God isn't judging us, what are we doing judging ourselves as harshly as we do by listening to that stuff in our heads?
You know, I actually believe that we can go beyond forgiveness. When we really start to realize that people are doing the best they can with what they know in that moment, regardless of what they've done, it's beyond forgiveness. It's more like empathy, compassion. It's trying to understand where they're coming from. And that goes not just with what other people do, but with yourself. And when you can do it for yourself, it starts to become easier to do it for other people. So start by being more empathic towards yourself. Whenever you do something that you feel you're judging yourself, I mean, how many times do you say things like, oh man, that was so stupid of me. How could I have done that? Or I should have done that differently. It's things like that. Watch that self-talk and tell yourself, no, I'm a beautiful child of the universe. I don't deserve to be talked to like that. And start to empathize with yourself. And when you can do that for yourself, you'll start to do that for other people. And you'll realize there's nothing to forgive. And I also want to add that in the other realm, there's no judgment because there's nothing to judge. We are all love. We're all pure love. Unconditional love. So there's nothing to judge. And one of the most controversial things in my book, which many people ask me about, is about the fact that I say that there's no judgment, there's no hell, there's no punishment. When you realize that there's nothing to forgive, then there's nothing to punish either. People who commit acts that take them to prison while we're in physical life, yes, we have prisons here to protect us from people who live in so much fear that they can't be trusted not to cause harm. But when they cross over, they themselves understand in that moment of clarity, they themselves understand that everything they did out of fear. They did because they didn't know any better. Now, if you imagine, if you have a child who you have been punishing because they have been not just reckless, but destructive and harmful to other people, harmful to their siblings, so you have had to reprimand them, punish them, scold them. Now imagine if one day, when the child comes to you and says, oh my God, I've had an awakening. I understand why I did those things and how stupid it was of me. Are you going to burn them in hell for all of eternity? Of course not.
That's what I want people to see. It's not about rules. It's not about punishment. It's about loving and trusting your heart and it's about looking for the good and the love in other people and finding it and sharing it. That's what it's about.
What a wonderful message. And I guess in essence, we are all divine beings of God.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And precious, precious to God. God loves everybody so much, even the ones that are bad. You know, I got in real trouble with my church when the United States went into Afghanistan, and I was praying for Osama bin Laden. The people in my church got angry with me, and I said, wait a minute. He needs our love. He needs our prayers. What? And they're like, no. It's like,
now, I was a believer, but I had this belief that life was a test, and that God was going to judge me. And I was probably failing the test based on, just this perfection complex I had about, gosh, I'm never going to be good enough. So a lot of my religious practice was probably out of fear. Well, I better check off the boxes. I better make sure I do it right. I want to be in good stead, when I meet my Maker. And I'm not saying that was a bad thing, but it certainly has shifted, having had a peek into the other side now.
So I was like, well, here it is. I want to ask. And I kind of went up, and it was I didn't even have to ask, because the question that was there in my mind, well, which one is the true church? It was already in his understanding that it was in my mind. And at the same time that I was feeling this question, I was in his place, seeing myself from his wisdom and knowledge and background. And the way I saw myself asking was like a little kid who goes up to someone with maybe some more wisdom or knowledge. And it was as if I were saying, so tell me, which kind of cheese is the moon made of? Is it Jack, Swiss, or cheddar? And it was, he didn't answer me with words or even with that telepathic communication. He smiled at me, and he just kind of lowered his head in a way that I understood he was going to let me wait a while, whatever a while means, until I was ready to figure out what it was I really needed to ask.
I was being communicated to, not with words, but with waves of emotional, energetic energy that had, I sensed the power. First of all, the love was unconditional. I cannot stress that enough. And I say that, and I don't mean to offend anyone who has a deep belief in the Christian religion, but that didn't, what I experienced, that love that I experienced, did not fit with the story I've been told of how Christianity works. And because I knew the love was unconditional, flat out unconditional. And I wish I could go around and touch people and just have them experience that degree of love like I did, so they knew what I'm talking about. Because sometimes people get offended when I tell them that. That is not my intent to offend anyone or begrudge anybody's religion, because that's not what I'm trying to do. I'm just trying to express to you what I experienced.
What was shown to me when I died, like the idea of going to hell and suffering for all eternity, and oh, by the way, I love you. That didn't fit. A lot of the things just simply didn't fit, and it was, and it caused a great deal of torment. I didn't know something was wrong. It didn't add up.
The love I felt in the other realm, it doesn't matter where or who it was coming from, because all of us have different philosophies of how we like to see life. I don't like to put labels on anything. So whether the love comes from Jesus or Allah or Krishna or Buddha, it doesn't matter. Whether it came from my father, it's all God. The love was still unconditional. And that love that I felt told me that I was deserving and I was worthy of being loved. And it made me realize that it's okay to love myself. Most of us don't know this while growing up. While we are children, we don't realize, or even as we grow up, when we're teenagers and in our 20s, we don't realize that it's okay to love ourselves. When we're born, we know it's okay to love ourselves. When we're born, we're happy little children. Look at babies. Babies are so full of themselves and they're so joyful. And then we spend a lifetime getting it conditioned out of us. And then halfway through our life, we then start reading self-help books and going to courses to bring it back into our lives, to find it again. So what I want to tell you is that really, if you loved yourself, so many of your problems and issues in life would actually be solved and healed.
I'm pious in my beliefs, but I am not religious. And I found that religion for me, and I'm only speaking for me, was too limiting. It was too confining a box for me to be in. I no longer needed a priest to have a connection to God. I could go directly to the source, and I do constantly. I'm in constant contact and communication. and it serves me well. So we all have to find our way and what feels right to us. And I think the most important thing is to trust what you know and what you believe, because nobody knows better for you than you, not even me. So most of us, you know, give our power away in certain ways to other people and circumstances, and I'd like you to remember never to do that, because you are your own God self and you do know better. So
before he had a chance to answer, I said, you know, I'm an artist and I would like to build you a shrine. If I were to come back to the world, I'd like to build a shrine. And I said, I'd make this shrine so big and beautiful and bizarre that people would come from all over the world out of curiosity to see what it was about. And what they would find was, it would be about you. And then that would make them think about you. And that's what I would like to do if he came back. And he said, I'd rather you didn't do that. And I said, what? You know, like I said, people have been building shrines to you, you know, forever. You know, there's lots of shrines. Why can't I build a shrine? I'd like to build a shrine. He said, you spent so much of your life hiding out in the studio, avoiding people. He said, I would prefer it if you didn't avoid people by building this big shrine. And he said, the other thing is, he said, I don't really care about shrines. He said, you know, people like to build shrines. And he said, I understand that it makes them feel good. But he said, it does absolutely nothing for me or for God. We don't have any use for them whatsoever. He said, if that's what amuses you, I guess that's what you got to do. But he said, don't do it for me. Don't deceive yourself in thinking that it's something that I want or need, because I don't.
But all those denominations or religions on this side of reality that we try to put into constructions of thought, it's lost its importance to me.
Irgendwie in Denkgebäude zu fassen, das hat für mich an Wichtigkeit verloren.
I had already believed it before, but I hadn't experienced that this faith is true. But if I'd compare this with an image, this experience demonstrates that everything is a lot bigger, a lot vaster, a lot more universal, and that it affects all of us.
Viel weiter, viel universeller und uns alle angehend ist.
It's probably just very little. Can I say it like that? But I don't want to be too cautious. I'll just say it. Faith is a crutch for this side of the world. It helps us to walk. For me, it's the Christian belief system, whether it is Catholic or Lutheran. Well, I believe these two denominations have so many common features and not many proper differences anyway. They never played a big role to me anyway. Faith is just a walking aid, and I won't need this walking aid anymore. This crutch.
We're all here to learn. We're all here to do better and be better. How you treat others and stuff. Oh, and there's no religion. That's the other thing. If you go there, there's no religion. There's no priest, there's no rabbi, there's no bishop, there's nothing. It does not matter. Nothing. So when I hear someone say, well, you're going to hell because you're not this and this, I'm like, trust me, you're in such a surprise when you get there. Because it's so not relevant. It's just not relevant. And the important thing is that you learn, however you learn about God and being a better person, however you get that experience, that information is good, right? But there's no right or wrong religion at all. So long as you're a good person, you know, are following God and all that, that's what matters. Doesn't matter how you get there, but no, you're not going to go there and see a priest and a rabbi and all that. No, not at all. It's so just not part of the process at all, at all.
And there are no churches there, not where I was. It wasn't about just one way, and it wasn't about doctrines and books, but just about a universal compassion and love for everything, for everyone. Animals, plants, birds, all of it. It's all together.
I had a friend who was a fundamentalist minister in Georgia who was raised in a very strict fundamentalist church. And he was absolutely convinced that only members of his church were going to heaven and everybody else would go to hell. And on the way to church one morning, he had a wreck in which it's amazing that he survived. But he had this experience of seeing everything he had ever done. He said what God was interested in was how I had learned to love. People who come back from a near-death experience will say that this being of light that they meet, who sort of helps guide them through their life review, you can't even come up with the words to describe what this love of this being is like. That we have to use the word love because that's the closest we have on the earth to describe it, but that it's so far beyond anything that we experience as love while we're here that words fail us when we're trying to describe it. People often go into these experiences thinking that it's going to be one of judgment, that that God has been keeping a book with all your making marks against you for various kinds of infirmities or muffs in life. And so they go into this with the attitude that they're going to be judged. But what they come out seeing pretty quickly in this life review is not a matter of judgment. It's a matter of how have you learned? What did you learn from this? And how have you learned to love? And people say that in this situation, you can see that the answer is obvious because you're surrounded by a panorama of every single thing you've ever done. And this being sees it completely. And yet, whatever is in that panorama, this being loves you completely. After this, people are inspired to try to be good and loving to others. Still within the framework of human failings, that it's still difficult, but at least that vision of the importance of love inspires them to get busy to try to bring it into everyday reality.
Now, the important thing, I think, to take home with this is that even if people have such a horrific experience, that doesn't necessarily lead to them coming back believing they're condemned or they've been especially bad people. Very often people that have these types of experiences come back and say, ultimately, often months to years later after they've had a chance to learn from it. But many of these people come, if not most, come back and say, I needed an experience like that to learn some things, to let go of that anger, guilt, resentments, and really live the rest of my life with that much less of an issue than it was before the experience.
I believe that in many ways the hellish ones are incomplete. That we can encounter that darkness and what we interpret down in these low realms, in this material realm and in the lower spiritual realms, as evil. But that in fact, by remembering our connection, by recalling and coming to know that we are all infinite spiritual beings, eternal spiritual beings that are very directly connected to the divine creative source of the universe, which is in its purest manifestation, pure, unconditional love beyond any description, which of course so many near-death experiencers bring back with them from those journeys. It's by knowing that connection to the divine, that infinite power and love of that divine, that we are able to bring that light and love into any realm we exist in.
It's man-made, effectively. It's a human construct that for all of our negative energy, we can't take, as I said, the oil spill in the Pacific Ocean, we can't take that into heaven. God doesn't want us to go to hell. So one of the downsides, I guess, to free will, it's your decision. It's up to you where you go. God doesn't want you to go there. Nobody wants you to go there. You're all welcome in heaven. It's our home. It's where we belong. It's where we came from. But if we're almost making that, now whether it's subconscious or whether no one will consciously choose to go to hell, and I talk about this in the book. No one will consciously say, I belong in hell. Nobody thinks that, right? Even Hitler didn't think that. I believe, based on my research, hell is not eternal. And that's a very difficult subject to agree with, because scripture teaches us that hell is eternal. But again, if there's an unconditional love from God, why would he make such a place? So God didn't create hell. We did. We as souls, and bearing in mind that, and there's other books that talk about this from a positive perspective, we are an extension of God. And there's this oneness that we have. So we separate ourselves from agape, from the light, and we almost condemn ourselves to hell ourselves.
So do you think it's possible for everybody to escape hell, or there's some people that they're never getting out?
Well, it's up to them, right? I mean, that's the underlying message here. It's I judge, not I've been judged. We judge ourselves. So when we first come to Earth, when we're born into this world, we're clean as far as evil's concerned, and we collect these things as we go through life. The problem that we see is that people that do go to hell don't know that there's a way out.
And then I come to a stop and I'm hovering. And as I'm hovering, that buzzing noise starts turning to this muffled, like garbled murmur times hundreds and hundreds of people. Negativity. There was loathing, self-loathing. There was anger. There was hatred. There was so much energy draining feeling that I felt if I was around this conversation any longer, that I would start getting sucked into it and my life force would be drained. And as soon as I had that feeling, I was panicking because I didn't feel God in this whole experience. As soon as I had that feeling, all I could do is cry out to God. It was a telepathic communication again. And I remember saying, God, help me. I love you. I didn't understand what was going on, especially after everything that had just happened to me in heaven. As soon as I cried out and I made that love, heartfelt connection to God, my light turned on in me, and I was the only light in the whole place. And as it illuminated everything, I could see below me. I was just hovering within inches of all these people. And they were miserable in this pit, and they could see me, and they started grabbing at me. And I remember feeling all the detail, like their fingers. There was big hands, there were small hands, there were strong hands, weak. And I could feel them grabbing on, trying to pull me down. I panicked, and all I could do is cry out to God, God, help me, I love you, please help me. And I felt like if I would have spent another moment there, all my life force would have been drained out. I was in the edge of hell. And so for the rest of the time, which felt like forever, getting back down to planet Earth, I spent having this communication with God. I love you, God. Thank you so much for loving me. And it was that force, again, that fuel that sustained me, that propelled me back down.
If you find yourself in hell, either call out to God or forgive yourself for all your wrongdoings to get out. And to prevent from going to hell in the first place, treat people well. Don't treat them, don't be bad to people. I'm oversimplifying everything, but I just want
No, it's right. It's better to simplify. Absolutely. That's the right message.
I was just trying to say, am I right on that, or do we need to add anything else?
Well, it's that. So if you had to tell someone and you didn't have the benefit of a book to read, then yes, that's sufficient. So I would also suggest take some time now to look back through your life. And it's not about making yourself feel guilty, right? That you don't have to feel, you need to forgive yourself. And that's what people struggle with the most. And I talk about a lot about this in the book, The School of Life. We're only human. We make mistakes, we mess up, we do bad things. And that's kind of the whole point of us being here, not to do bad things, but to learn from what we do. So ultimately, yeah, it's to avoid hell, just be a good person, right? Because a lot of people, do I need to practice a certain religion? No, just be a good person. Just treat people well. Treat others the way you want to be treated yourself.
And he looked at me and he said, Erica, it's free will. And I didn't understand what that meant at first, because to me, everybody was fine. But he was crying for the ones that chose the separation from him. And I understood in that very moment how much God loves each and every one of us and wants that connection with each and every one of us. But he loves us so much that he lets us have that choice to have that connection.
You are deeply loved and cherished forever. You have nothing to fear. You will be taken care of. And nothing to fear is very, very critical, because I saw very much, in my view, how this was not a battle between good and evil, between light and darkness. In fact, there's plenty of evil and darkness in this world, but it's not a force that is against love and light of that infinitely powerful Creator. We simply serve as channels to bring that love and light into this world, and it displaces the darkness and evil. The darkness and evil are plenty real in this material realm, and you can also encounter them in those lower spiritual realms, such as I did in that earthworm eye view. The important thing to remember is when you know and fully know that you are a divine, eternal, spiritual being directly connected to that all-powerful creative deity, you have nothing to fear. And that is all you need to know. When you believe that and know that, it enables you to bring that lightness and love into this world in the face of darkness and evil as we perceive it here, and to do so in those spiritual realms and ascend higher and higher towards that oneness with the divine.
I also recognize that there is something out there that isn't good.
Erkennen, dass es so etwas gibt wie das Nicht-Gute.
But this dualism of heaven and hell, God and the devil, well, I think these are the ideas you're talking about. Those ideas are pretty childish. If I believe appropriately, the more mature my faith becomes. When I manage to rescue my faith and transfer it to my adult life, then it will turn into a free belief that can think freely, also via denominational and religious dogmas.
I mean, the idea that God knows me and loves me more than I can appreciate it. You know, the Bible says that nothing can come between us and God's love, but I would disagree with that. I think the one thing that can come between that is us. I don't feel worthy of that love. I don't understand that love, and so I can't accept it.
But also simultaneously to that infilling and knowing that I was in the presence of God, all of my experiences rushed up too. And all of the pain that I'd caused everyone in my entire life came with it. And God said to me, I know everything about you, and there is nothing hidden. And in that knowing that I was known, I experienced a life review of all the people that I had hurt in my life. I experienced all of the pain that I'd ever given to every single person of my entire life. I didn't look at their pain. I lived their pain. And it was the pain that I gave them intentionally and the pain that I didn't even know that I had given them. And I remember that my sister Cynthia, who had not run away, was prominent in this, because Cynthia was very close to me in age, and Andrea was older than me. And so Cynthia and I, we tussled a lot. And I caused her an immense amount of pain. And I describe it now as hell, because it was so much suffering. I suffered so much suffering that I had given away, intentionally and unintentionally. And I judged myself as guilty and shameful. And it was everything that I'd ever done from the moment of my birth, to intend and not intend to hurt. And I conceive, because I'm a Christian minister, I conceive of that as sin now. The pain that I gave to people. And meanwhile, as I was going through this experience of self-judgment, the voice was saying to me, I know you. I've always known you. You are my creature. I made you. I make you. I love you as you are. I have always loved you. I loved you into being. I love you with all the pain you caused, and I love you without it. I love all of you. And none of this is a surprise to me. I know this about you already. And because I felt shame at my actions, in comparison with the infinity of love, I judged myself guilty, and I was forgiven. Jesus talks about the kernel and the chaff gets burned off in the fire, sort of like that. And then all of the pain was gone, and I was left with only love and beauty and joy and truth and hope and compassion, all one thing. And I got to bring with me into heaven all of the love that I'd ever given away and all of the love that was ever given to me. And that was the treasure of myself.
I could see that I was gore and filth and wounds all over. And I looked like roadkill. And he's gently putting his hands underneath me and very tenderly picking me up. And as he's touching me, everything just goes away. All the wounds, all the pain, all the dirt, it just kind of like evaporated away. And I'm like whole and healed. And inside, just filled with his love, which I wish I could be more articulate about. It's so frustrating not being able to tell people about it, because, you know, it's the best thing that ever happened to me in my life. I mean, it's like it's the everything. You know, it's the all of life, is to know that love. And, you know, I get to it and I just can't describe it. I can't.
You can do no wrong. And of course, I get in a little bit of hot water over that one when people just get to the book and read that far and they go, wait a minute, we can do wrong down here. Well, the reality is she meant it. You can do no wrong, as long as we realize that we reap what we sow. If we hand out pain and suffering to others as part of the lessons we're trying to learn, we're going to end up either making amends in this incarnation or having to live through the pain and suffering on their behalf in that life review. There is no need for an eternal hell. And in fact, that life review provides plenty of impetus for us to learn the lessons of that love.
And the life review process I was talking about before, that's a spiritual growth tool. It isn't meant to punish anyone. But again, someone like Hitler had a life review, not just from his own experience, his own personal experience, but every life he ever affected. as if he were them, as if he were in their body, experiencing their consciousness and their experience as his own, because people, we are all one. We literally are all one. And that's what Christ meant when he said, what you do to me, and when you do to others, you do to me also. He wasn't kidding at all. He really wasn't kidding.
Yeah, but Hitler, I mean, it's an extreme example, but if he's in front of God, and it's not always God, sometimes it's a guardian angel, it's beings, so it's probably better to say that. So if Hitler's in front of God, and he's having to go through this, imagine the lives it's impacted. I mean, let alone the 6 million people that died. Think of all the ripples of their families and in the future and so on. So that's a lot to take on, right? And you would think judgment is you go to hell, right? You go to hell. So people say, well, yeah, but he's not going to care, is he? But he's not that human being anymore. He's a soul now. And so he's in a situation where I did all this real bad stuff when I was a human being, but now I have this heightened sense of empathy. I have to experience, not judgment, to learn from what I've done. I have to experience all of these things that I've done. Can I get through that? Can I get through that process? The chances are, and there's in the book, there's examples of people that ended up in hell for much lesser things, just because they had contempt in the way they treated people. And so I'm judging myself, right? Can I deal with? Can I complete my life review? Can I suffer through? And the intent is not to suffer. You need to learn from this. If the answer is no, you're not shedding your negative energy. You're not going for that process. You're not completing that process of the life review or judgment, if people feel more comfortable with that word. So what happens then? Well, there's only one place that negative energy can go. It goes to hell. We call it hell.
I mean, I could forgive Hitler thinking that at some point he has to experience all of the pain that he himself has inflicted.
That very point once came up in one of my classes. I don't know if I have time to tell this particular story, but there was a woman who gave an account of a near-death experience that she had when she was in her 20s. She had a very abused childhood and was incested and so forth. When she came into the presence of the light, you know, people, when they get into the presence of the light, they can sort of ask almost any question, and the question will be immediately telepathically answered. And her question was, does everybody come into this light? And she was given the answer telepathically, yes, that everybody does. Then she said, even my father, who had done these terrible things, you know, even Hitler, and the answer was always yes. When it came time for questions from my students and myself, somebody said, how can you say that Hitler, you know, this paragon of moral evil and so forth, could actually have this particular experience of coming into the light? And she said, you have to understand there's a price. First, you have to look at your life. So just as you say, can you imagine what the life review of Hitler would have been like to have gone through? Because one of the things that people say about the near-death experience in regard to the life review is that you become aware of the consequences of your actions, whether you intended them or not, and even whether you are aware of the repercussions or not. So, I mean, if you think of all the ramifications of Hitler's, you know, decisions about how things were going to be done prior to and during World War II, not just with the Jews, but with all the atrocities. You know, that man died over 50 years ago. You wonder whether his life review is over yet.
Well,
perfect justice.
It seems as if the life review takes place outside of our normal space and time.
It does.
Because it might take forever.
Yes. Yeah, I'm saying, I'm not really meaning literally that his life review is not over yet, but because people say in the near-death experience, and when they have the life review, that they are outside of time, and yet they can process all this information. And a lot of people, not to give it a heavy tone, because people have the near-death experience, they don't say, I don't want people to feel guilty about this. I don't want, they say, it's like a learning experience. It's meant to show you something. Because Hitler obviously is the most extreme case that we can use. In the normal case, what people say about the near-death experience and what they learn from the life review is it shows them something. It teaches them something. It is a teaching. It's not something that's meant as a punishment or to scare people. And none of my remarks should imply that. It's meant to wake people up so that they simply become aware of the consequences of their actions before committing those actions, knowing that they themselves are going to have to be the recipients of them. It's as if there's only one person in the universe, and it's us.
Depression and suicide. So suicide is a good example. And it's not the act of suicide, although based on my research, God's not a fan of that, but it's not like a direct ticket to hell. There's plenty of examples of positive NDE experiences where people have committed suicide.
And so I'm in the car driving him
one day, and he taps me on the shoulder. I about died that night at the house. I said, well, no kidding, you were purple. And he goes, no, I about died. And as soon as he said that, I turned to him and I said, what did you see? He said he was choking. And then all of a sudden, he's up. And he's in this warm, beautiful place. And our mother is approaching him. She died in 2002. And she's on his left side. A friend who committed suicide a year before comes and I was on the right side of him, a dear friend. And my brother knew what was happening. And he said, please, not yet. And my mother said, then breathe, son, breathe. Boom, there he is with the ambulance people. He said, what do you think about that? I said, what do you think? He said, I think they bought me some more time. I said, I think you're right. But the other thing was, we were told when we were little kids, if you committed suicide, you went to hell. Well, number one, I don't believe in hell as what we were taught as a child anymore. And number two, it gave my brother the realization that his friend did not go to a horrible place. Because that was one of the reasons why my brother was so concerned about dying. Am I good enough? I've lived a rough life. Who will take me in? Who will speak for me? And he had peace. He died a year later.
Oh, and that's right, the other thing I was told was that because it's not my time, there's no cheating. The interpretation is no suicide. You are cheating if you do that. He didn't say it was a sin or a crime. I'm not saying that I know if it is or it isn't because I don't. But he said no cheating. What about that part? You cannot go before it's your time or it's cheating. I don't know why he said that, but he did. So no suicide.
Yeah, one thing I can tell you is that suicide won't work. If you're thinking about that, you can just scratch that one off the list because it's not going to do what you think it's going to do. And I'm not exactly sure what that means. Again, I'm no guru, but I know that was one of the things that I was shown is that no, you're not going. There's no short way around. You're not going to die until you fulfill your purpose.
So what I think about suicide now, I feel like you're cheating yourself, so to speak. But like I said, I can't judge because some people just have had enough. And like there was nothing worse than being here. I didn't care what was going to happen next. Nothing could be worse than being here. So that's why I can't judge. But I wish I could tell any suicidal person to just stick around. Things, just wait for it to change, because right when you're on that verge of giving up, that's when something good is going to happen. If I can go back, I would tell myself, this world is very huge. You're important, because if you weren't, you wouldn't be here. I would also tell myself, out of all the people you know, there's someone that you can talk to that loves you. If not, I can love you.
You know, any near-death experience or mystical experience or out-of-body experience, the universe speaks to us in the language that we'll understand. Even if it doesn't make sense, they know that our heart will get it. And in this instance, I was holding my little boy in a very physical way. And as I did, I felt someone come up behind me. Now, this was so overwhelming, I didn't even dare turn around. What I felt was so cosmic and so powerful and so profound and so wise, and yet also so absolutely personal. It startled me at first. There I was holding my son and feeling this presence come up. I knew I was in the presence of God. Nothing short of that. It was so overwhelming. And the interesting thing is I had this moment where I thought, oh no. I hope he forgives me. And what I felt as I held my little boy was this divine being come up and wrap those arms around me and hold me.
And the clear message was there's nothing to forgive. Nothing but love. Absolute, unconditional love just poured through me.
I knew that I was home, and I had no intention of returning. And these people, or spirits, started taking me down this beautiful pathway that exploded with colors and flowers and the aromas of flowers, which is what speaks beauty to my soul. And I absolutely believe that God presents to each one of us the experience at the time of our death that does speak beauty to us, that lets us know that we are known and loved.
And in that light, some of us are given a choice to come back and some are not. Some are spoken to and some are not. The stories and the details are all different, and the essential core learning and truth is similar. But in my case, I was spoken to by a voice I heard really well. And by the way, every time everyone's spoken to in the light by a voice is exactly the voice they need to hear, in exactly the language and exactly the tone that we need to hear. And I heard this voice say, Lewis, you are called here to have this conversation and to be sent back because you're not doing your work. In response to which I said, I surrender, take me, I'm yours, I will do your work. I must have been imagining I was being called to be a missionary of sorts. And I was told immediately, no, Lewis, it's not my work you need to do. It's your work. It's your work. It's your work. It's your work. We each are doing our own work, and I got it very clearly. It's your work you need to do, Lewis. Great. Tell me, what is my work? Here I was in a place where, since all truth is known, I expected the source of all truth to be able to make it easier for me. Didn't happen. Until I went deeper and got that in addition to the words that we're all one under God, I was also given the words that, well, noblesse oblige, you have more than others, so give back. And I went deeper and realized that with those gifts, I had created a feeling of a betterment, and that I had to help others who didn't have as much. And yet I started to discover loneliness, that even though I was told we're all one under God, my experience was, well, we may all be one under God, but somehow I and my tribe am better than you and your tribe. Woo. And the gap that created in me between my spirit and yours was so deep that I didn't know how to bridge it. So I was told, just like Amadeus was just like Mozart was in the movie Amadeus, when that perfect note was hit, there it is. I was told, there it is, Lewis, there's your work. And I was sent back down without any knowledge about how my life would change. And what happened was doors started to open. Another learning from another weakness of thinking that I could control what doors I wanted to open became that doors opened on their own and others closed on their own. And if I could just notice that, if each of us could just notice that, and then move through the doors that open and then use whatever skills we're given in this body and this life experiences to help co-create with the universe.
And it was as if somebody took this big brush and just went like this across a canvas. And suddenly I was looking at a park-like setting. And there was grass and trees and flowers, and they all were, the colors were things that we never see here. I mean, what we see here is like looking through a sheer curtain. It's almost gray compared to what's there. And everything was alive and sentient. And there were, trees and birds and animals. And suddenly I saw all, the cats and dogs. Every cat and dog I ever knew in my life who had passed was there. And they were just running around having a great time.
Most of us have lost pets. I was 9 years old. And my dog, Skippy, was there. My dog was there. And again, remember, I didn't know I was dead. And now he didn't have fur and legs and stuff, but it was Skippy. He was also a floating sphere of awareness. And he absorbed him. We absorbed each other, and we were communicating. There was communication going on, but it was perfect communication. It was like telepathic, in human communication, there's this thing that happens all the time. I know you know about this, like where you will say something and I will hear something completely different based on my filters, right? So human communication's flawed, but that communication there was perfect. And Skippy and I were talking to each other. It was, I love you, I love you. Oh, Skippy, I love you. Where are we? What happened? How did we get? You know, it was kind of going on and on like that. And so here's the headline: your loved ones, your pets, they're there. They're still there, and you'll see them again.
So I said, what was my purpose? And this voice said to me, the same as every man. You were put on the earth to take care of the earth. And come to find out later, Adam did tend the garden and keep it. Even before the fall, he had work to do. We as men are here to take care of the earth. It's one of our responsibilities as men. And that was very personal. He said, you're not to strip mine the earth, you're not to pollute the earth, you're not to destroy your home. And I was being indicted because I was responsible. I was a litterer. I was one that didn't care about nature or environment at all. And this was a beautiful home that God had created for me to live and enjoy. And he said, secondly, you're here for the animals. They look up to you. You're the one with the spirit. You're the one with reason, with intelligence, with the strength to change things, the ability to protect them and take care of them and do for them. They don't have that ability, and yet you destroy species after species. And I knew that I was responsible, partly responsible. I had hunted for sport. I had no concern for animals. I never showed any compassion for animals. I didn't have any compassion for animals or men. And he said, thirdly, and most importantly, you're here for each other.
There were two sisters who were losing their mother, and before she died, they said, now could you, when you die, will you send us a sign that you're okay? Then one of them said, send us a cardinal. And her mom said, I'll see what I can do. The day after her memorial service, they all got together to play her favorite card game. And one of them heard a noise at the window. So they went out and came back in carrying a cardinal. It wasn't hurt. It was letting them all pet it. Then they took it outside to release it, and that's the part they videotaped. So this sister, one of the two sisters, throws the cardinal up in the air, and it flies up in the air and then comes back and lands on her shoulder. And they both started crying. It was so sweet, and I was so excited to see this video because I have been hearing about these experiences and having them, and I'm like, somebody caught it on tape. So if you Google sisters receiving a sign and cardinal, you'll be able to watch that video. When someone approaches me and asks me, do you believe that we have many lives? I don't know. I can't tell you that for sure. It makes a lot of sense. I don't think I can learn everything in one lifetime. But if you do, I think the most important life that we're to be concentrating on is this life, this journey, this day, this time. This is what we're supposed to be about.
I think that a lot of people think that having an experience like this is a magical blessing, and I suppose in a lot of ways it is, but it's not. It's also a huge burden. Any experiencer you talk to will tell you that.
And I'd like to say that if you're pining to have a near-death experience and you want to experience this, I would say don't. This is not what you want. It may seem like a blessing, but it's as often a curse as it is a blessing. It leaves one disassociated. It leaves one depressed. I went through a long period of depression. I live a life in non-attachment, not detachment, but non-attachment. My connectivity is to the other side, not so much here.
Our responsibility is not to know the answer and to make that judgment of whether something is worth it or not. But our responsibility is to trust and to say, yes, God's will be done. And trust that there is beauty that will come of all things. And that there is hope in the plan for each person's